Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Tuesday, April 22nd. Um, so, someone, I had a, a video, I think it was entitled, "We All Know Where This Is Going." It was, I think, it's from 3 years ago. I'm not sure, April maybe, 3 years ago. And one of my viewers commented that they're watching it now. And a lot of the stuff I was saying in the video are coming true. I listened to a little bit of it. So I'll put that at the end of this video here. I just had a few short comment things I want to get to. 3 of them, I guess. This was, yeah, I'll do that comment last. So this one was, didn't click on your thumbnail to hear about sports ball, unsubscribed. Sports ball. So I did a couple of videos on the Quidditch thing. And did I do the follow-up my last video? I don't know if I did the follow-up. I have that for today. I have a follow-up on the Quidditch thing for today. That's going to be funny. There is a snitch. But the thumbnail is of the sports ball. And I don't understand what the problem is. You saw the thumbnail there and whatever. So that's kind of funny. And so then there's this one. There's a couple of Trumpers that showed up. The first one said this: "That's because he's saving the country from the Democrats' theft, rape, and murder. Trump's COVID website doesn't take responsibility for his failure." I said talk. Common mistake for me, something like that. To the same video with the Quidditch as a thumbnail. And so another person writes back, "So this is what saving the country looks like? That's somehow powerful hopium you're smoking." And the guy responds to him, "Only Dems do drugs and can't spell them." Because the guy misspelled hopium. These are the Trump morons, right? So one of my viewers, who's obviously not a Democrat, "So this is what saving the country looks like? That's powerful hopium you're smoking. Only Dems do drugs and can't spell them." That person thought that they were talking smack because the guy misspelled it. But it's really hopium because he doesn't know what it is because he's too stupid because he's smoking it, right? Okay, so the other comment is one that I already read. So let's just get into the normal stuff here. So the meat of this video is going to be about Pete Hegseth and Trump's Trump people, just falling apart and weird shit. But I have a little bit on the Trump. I have a little bit on the Pope, and then the economy, and then we'll get to the Pete Hegseth and other Trumpers, a couple of his other people. But let's start here with the Pope.
Overseas now to Rome and Easter services in Vatican City. The Pope making a short appearance with thousands gathering there in St. Peter's Square.
Remember, they made this a Mercedes-Benz. It's a Pope-mobile, right? They built this especially for him, this Pope-mobile. They used to have different Pope-mobiles. But, he talked about what a simple person he was and a poor man to the poor and aware of the people. But come on, right? This is...
ABC's Marcus Moore is there live this morning. Good morning, Marcus.
Hey, Gio, good morning. It's been a full week of events and ceremonies, all of it leading up to Easter Mass that just wrapped up a short time ago. You may be able to hear the band behind me.
We do, Marcus.
Here at the Vatican. Also, just moments ago, I think we have some video of this. Pope Francis, we saw him passing by in the Pope-mobile, where he greeted the thousands of faithful who have come.
Pope-mobile. Also, Kanye gave the weirdest tweet. I don't know if it's still up. If it is up, I will read it to you. It's so creepy. It's just, it's so I'm cringy. It's just icky feeling. I just remembered it. One of my viewers sent it to me.
From all over the world to be here at Vatican City and to celebrate Easter. This morning, as worshipers across the world begin their Easter celebrations in Vatican City, crowds filling St. Peter's Square for Easter Mass and Urbi et Orbi, a papal blessing to the world. Pope Francis appearing at the events and penning this Easter's Urbi et Orbi message. The Pope blessing the crowd and briefly spoke in a low voice, introducing the message before it was read out by the Master of Ceremonies. The Pope's words calling for peace around the world and mentioning almost every conflict on the planet.
Okay, so quite a crowd they get there. But, you know, it seems kind of suspect that he died on Easter Sunday. Right? Like, that's kind of, you know, lame. I mean, not lame, just suspicious. Not lame. Kind of suspicious, right? It's just so weird. Like, this stuff is so weird, like all of it. These robes and the hats and the, you know, I mean, it's trying to make you look special, right? Like, it tries to, you know, say that you're spiritual or whatever, and these cardinals are always political, and they're just such scumbaggery stuff that's happened there. Let's get to the next thing here. So my wife sent me this. I've already moved past this in the video, but I'll go back and drop this in. So watch this reaction. There's a black guy that comes up, and the Pope, like watch this. Like here, this guy's talking to these guys. This guy gives him a little smooch. Yeah, give us a kiss. Just so fucking weird, these guys. So ghoulish, these old ghoulish looking MFers. This guy comes up. He's like, look at his hand. Go back here. So this guy comes up, and maybe it's not racial because it's just, you know, but the guy goes to kiss his hand here, and he turns away like, and his hand is moving here. Like, stop it. Watch his hand here. It's like, get away, get away, get away. He leans away from him. And this guy, yeah, hey, you guy, like, so I don't know if he has something, this guy. So I don't know if he has something personal with that guy or it's racial, but he's the only black dude there. And he's the only person that he dismisses, so it looks like it's racially motivated. Unless he just doesn't like that guy. But, you know, it's performative. There's other people there. I mean, it's just one of those things where you're supposed to put on a happy face. And, like, if he has some personal anger towards that guy, you know, it's just fucked up, right? Look at their facial expressions. He looks like he's... It's a great moment here. Starts off earlier. At the beginning. Here we go.
About 1 in every 5 Americans is Catholic, with New York City being one of
20%.
The nation's Catholic hubs. That's where we find CNN's Bryn Gingras.
You okay, man? You okay, Wolfie? You okay, Wolf? Wolf, what's up?
Catholic hubs. That's where we find CNN's Bryn Gingras. She is live at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Bryn, what are Catholics here in the U.S. saying about Pope Francis?
Yeah, Pam, you know what? It's not just Catholics. We're seeing people of all faiths go into St. Patrick's Cathedral and pay their...
How do you know they're all faiths? You asking them? Are you a Catholic or an all faith?
respects to Pope Francis. I'm going to get out of the way because I want you to see what's happening right now. You can see there's NYPD people.
It's an amazing building here. I've been there.
Here at the front of St. Patrick's Cathedral, putting up the bunting for Pope Francis. Inside, there are a number of places inside this cathedral where people could light candles, pay their respects.
Purple for royalty.
Say prayers, and we're seeing that happening at the altar. There is a big picture of Pope Francis along with the chalice that he used when he visited here in New York City in 2015.
He likes his chalices. He did.
And gave mass at Madison Square Garden. Also, the presider chair that he sat in when he gave that mass. So there are.
Archbishop of New York remembers Pope Francis is a great teacher. You know, I was saying yesterday, like, it's not something that can happen organically with all the politics and positioning and just getting into these positions of being a bishop and then an archbishop and then a cardinal and all these things, right? You know, they have to rise up through the ranks, and like, it's not something you do for being saintly. Like, it doesn't recognize your spiritual inner condition. It recognizes you as, you know, how you've positioned yourself politically and the power that you have and the, you know, whatever they've done to work their way up and weasel their way up into those positions, right? And like, that's you know, anything that's hierarchical ends up with that kind of stuff, right? You know, that should be that there's a divine being at the top of your organization. Like, he's just supposed to be the most spiritual. You know, I did a story yesterday, and I kind of butchered it. Like, this young guy shows up at like the master of the mission had just died. And the young guy shows up, and he has a note that says the master has come, and meaning him, this young guy. And he's got a note from one of the other senior people. And this young guy is supposed to be the master, the succeeding master. And the guy who's the steward looks at it and thinks it means himself. And then over time he realizes, no, it's this young person. And then he, goes, okay, God has spoken. I bow before you. And so, even though the guy was younger, it was a kind of interesting story. It's like a, Indian guru story. But like it's, recognizing, you have to be able to recognize when people are better at something than you are, right? Like there should be no competition in this kind of, I saw this with, in the Sajmarg meditation, people were very competitive about these things. And, my attitude was always, I hope some people are better than me, right? Like, if everybody was better than me spiritually, then like I would be, I would be dealing with people who are just better, like nicer, better, whatever it is. Like it doesn't, it's not a competition. I mean, it's better for everybody. It pulls you up, right? When you're around higher developed souls, it pulls you up. If everybody, it's the lower developed souls are pulling people down all the time and dragging them down into the muck. This is just one of the fundamental principles of spirituality. Get around higher developed people, even if it's not spiritual. If it's like you want to be a great violinist, then get around great violinists. You get associated with these people, and they influence you. Coaches and teachers and performers and artists and anybody who reaches a higher level in something that you want to yourself achieve, then you have to go be around them, compete against them, and you absorb through osmosis and things. And you see this if like a great basketball player shows up at a pickup court, they'll elevate the whole play of everybody there. You see this even in the NBA, that the better players, you'll see, other players have to raise their level to compete with them. So, but again, this is a non-competition thing I'm talking about here, but all those things are true. There's sort of an upliftment that happens. And so there should be no reason to be, jealous or competitive about these things. Like, it should be, I was grateful that Kamlesh was the Chargy's successor. I just happy there was one. Of course there wasn't, because he shit the bed. But anyways, that brings us to the thing with Ye. One of my viewers sent me this yesterday, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. I've talked about Kanye being my favorite celebrity, which, isn't the case anymore. He does performance art, but he's just pushed it way too far. I mean, all the stuff he's done in the past couple of years. And it's just, a lot of it's just kind of gross and icky, and like it's just whatever it is. And this is the worst of the worst. This is the worst thing he's done. So this is from his Twitter post, and there's a content warning sensitivity for a song he's put out. And he says, this song is called Cousins. It's about my cousins that's locked in jail for life for killing a pregnant lady. What? And it just, this is the best part of it. Like a few years after I told him we wouldn't look at dirty magazines together anymore. So his cousin killed a pregnant lady, and he's been in jail for life a few years after Kanye said that they wouldn't look at dirty magazines together anymore. Perhaps it's my self-centered mess. I felt it was my fault that I showed him those dirty magazine when he was about 6, and then we acted out what we saw. Yeah, that's going in that direction. And, it definitely probably didn't help him. Like my dad had Playboy magazines, but the magazines I found in the top of my mom's closet were different. Wow. My name is Ye, and I sucked my cousin's poop till I was 14. And then he has the song. Yeah, like just, what are you doing? That probably explains a lot. I don't think he made it up. He could have, like he just does weird shit and says weird shit. And that could be totally made up, but, maybe, I don't know what's going on there. But let's just move on. That last statement sounds like he's in group therapy or something. Hi, my name is Ye, and I, it's so fucking weird. So usually when I take something off the TV, once I have copied it, I leave it up for a day or so just in case it didn't take, like if there's background noise. But this guy in the puke green shirt is the snitch, right? You see there's a little tail. He almost ran into the referee there for a second. There's a tail on the back, and it's got a knot in it. And, in the Harry Potter movies, there's this little thing that's a snitch that flies around, and it's worth a gazillion points. And so one team's losing by 50, right? It's 130 to 80. And this guy is a professional comedian, apparently, but also played offensive lineman. And he's twice the size of these guys who are trying, they have these guys called the Seekers. And the Seekers seem to be all tiny guys. They're half his size, and they have to get around him and grab the tail while the other team is throwing balls at him. If they hit him with a ball, he's out. The dodgeball aspect of it. And then the other team takes a shot at it. And, they have this inert stick between their legs, which is, the guy is pushing them down the ground. He's much bigger than them. And they have the disadvantage of having to hold this stick between their legs. It has no bearing on anything because it's supposed to be a broom that they're flying on, like I said in my last video. And so, they're going to get hurt. Just this guy's diving with the stick between his legs. I mean, you're going to land on it. It's going to hit him in the face, maybe poking their an eye. And then, of course, anywhere else is going to be a disaster. And so, the name of this game should be called the useless stick between their legs game sport, right? An inert stick between your legs. Like the guys who are playing. Because, why have the stick? You don't need the stick. You don't need it. You don't need it. You're not using it. You're never going to use it. It doesn't work. It's not. Look at this guy in the bottom right-hand corner if you're not aware of where this adventure is taken out. So there's the real game's going on above, and this guy's just beating the shit out of these little guys who are desperately trying to grab the rope. Okay, so I had to go shopping, and I went for a walk with my dogs. Beautiful day outside, just spectacular. One of the 10 best. My wife and I always joke, when I was probably in my 20s, there was some local radio DJ, regular radio program that sometimes, it was like just music, but they would have weather. And, it was like one of those things where they used to have hosts, like a team, a couple of, like a man and a woman kind of thing, or one of them was supposed to be funny, that kind of thing. And they would have this guy on, the weather guy, and he would say, this is one of the 10 best days of the year, but he would say it like 30 times and a year. And they were always, I wouldn't listen to the show very seldomly when I was driving. I probably didn't have a tape player or something. And so, and I heard him say it probably 15 times a year. And so we always joke about that. But anyways, I was driving and I realized something important here. This was the theme of this video. I listened to some more of the Pete Hegseth thing. And I got this thing coming up from Jen Psaki. And, I've kind of hinted at this before, but not really saying it or seeing it this clearly. What Trump has done is make the fake news not fake news anymore, because they don't have to be fake news, but he's also made them right. And so in doing that, he gives them credibility. And, there's lots of people, who are binary in their approach to these things. And so they're either Democrat or Republican, they're either right or left. One has to be the good guy, one has to be the bad guy. And so Trump has made, a living on saying that everything that goes against what he's doing is fake news. But then when that fake news turns out to be true, and you have, real people suffering from his policies, right? And the news media has been saying that Trump was going to do exactly what he's saying. And so they get to look prophetic. And then people say, we should have listened to you. We should have listened to the Democrats, right? We should have listened to the mainstream media. And so this is the backlash that's waiting us all. And it's not that far off, right? I mean, it's going to be here. And then when Trump is gone, it's going to immediately set in with a lot of new censorship. I mean, 4 years from now, you won't be able to say anything because it'll be like, you guys are going to wreck the country again like Trump did, So it's something where they've created this net, with Trump being the one buffoon and all of us being caught up in that net because of the stupid QBs and the stupid Trumpers and Trump himself. So, in that, I want to show you this here. And then I'm going to demonstrate this phenomenon as we go through these other topics, right? It's a theme that's going to run through the rest of these video clips. So this guy's Nico Harrison. He's the guy who's credited for trading Luka Doncic.
That you feel their pain about losing Luka. What can you say to them?
Well, when you have 20,000 people in this stadium chanting "Fire Nico," you really feel it. I mean, it's.
They've been cheering "Fire Nico," and he's Nico.
I use the word awesome, but not in a positive way. Like, you can really feel how they feel. So yes, I feel them. How am I doing? I'm good. I said this last week. God's got me covered. I have an amazing family and an amazing support group to get through it. But no, I absolutely feel it. But I'm also, my job is to make decisions that I feel are in the best interest of this organization, and I got to stand by the decision, and some of them are going to be unpopular, and this was clearly one that's unpopular.
Okay, so then there's another one. Let me show you that one. So here's second one.
You said that Patrick Dumont initially laughed at you when you brought him the Luka trade. What did you say to convince him to approve it?
It wasn't really it wasn't really a laugh. It was more of a chuckle. But really, it was just, I'd said it out of the blue. And then as we started talking more, I gave him reasoning behind it. And, we're a very process-oriented organization.
Okay, so that's the owner. He's saying that the owner, he brought the idea to the owner, which I don't believe to be the case, right? So then there was this one.
Know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level. But really, the way we looked at it is, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis.
Okay, so he's going to try to say that team was going to make people forget about the trade, but they weren't, because even if they won this year, they would have had. What happened is Luka's a generational player, and he's 5 years younger than Anthony Davis, who's always hurt, and he was popular amongst the fans. But this had nothing to do with this guy. So sports media is savaging this guy, even though they say it's about ownership. Like, lots of the people are aware that the ownership pushed this, right? So they have this Supermax contract, which would have paid Luka like $100 million more than he's going to get now. And the only team that can give him the Supermax was the Dallas Mavericks, because that's the team he played for. And you have to have like 5 consecutive years of being on first team, all NBA, these kind of things. Like, you have to have, be like an elite player, like one of the best, for a long period of time. And he achieved all these milestones. So he was one of the few players, there's like a few of them that have this Supermax, right? That are able to get this, really big contract. And now he's been traded. He was going to lose like $80 million or $100 million that he would have gotten from the Dallas Mavericks. So that is at least part of it, right? Because we're talking about $80 million here. Mark Cuban has come out and said he wished he didn't trade the team. See, what happened was Mark Cuban was told that he was going to be head of basketball operations. So he sold 60% of the team. He made a couple of like $2.5 billion on the sale of the team, and he was going to retain 30% of it. And he was going to go in with this family. This is a Republican family. They're Trump donors. I forget the name of them. They own casinos. And they were going to build a casino in Dallas, which fell through. So Mark Cuban got paid, but then he said that he couldn't put in the contract that he would run the team. And so, he thought he was going to run the team, but he ended up not. And he said he wouldn't have done the trade, and they just told him. They called him up and they said, we're going to trade Luke. And he said, are you asking me, or is it already done? And they said, it's already done. And so, he was basically saying he wouldn't have done the trade, but had he done the trade, he would have asked for more from the Lakers, which pretty much everybody says. And this guy is the fall guy. But this was clearly an ownership decision, right? The Adelson family, right? The Adelsons, they're Republican donors for the most part, and they own casinos. And they are, not in this basketball business. And they may or may not care about the team or whatever it is. And so it's the consensus of everybody. This guy completely mishandled the trade. And, now all the players that he received or at least Anthony Davis got hurt and a number of the other players got hurt. They're out of the playoffs this year. And they have to re-sign Kyrie Irving to probably a really big contract next year. And they might not even do that. Who knows what's going to happen? And so this is an owner decision. Like, everybody knows that the owners would have had to pressure this guy to do it, to do this stupid thing. And, I mean, if he did this on his own, then it's a catastrophic failure, and he should be fired. Like, everybody's saying, fire this guy, like you can't, he just made this huge mistake, like it's the worst trade in history. And it's just going to be a reminder, and the fan base is pissed off. Plus, at the same time, they raised ticket prices by 20% or something like that, 10%. And so the fans are just like really pissed about the whole thing, the Dallas Mavericks fans. But this is like, the reason I'm talking about this is that all these mainstream media pundits know that this is an owner decision. But this is the guy they're putting out there in front of everybody, like he made the decision, and he's saying he's made the decision when he clearly, I mean, he had to have the owners sign off on it. You don't trade a franchise player without talking to the owners. Like, he even said he talked to the owners. But, if he's bringing it to the owners, like he said, they have to see he made a big mistake. Like, he just gave away a tremendous amount of value to their franchise and lost the goodwill and the good faith of the fans who at every game were chanting "Fire Nico," right? The fans want him to be fired. The media wants him to be fired. The only reason that he's not being fired is he's a shield for the ownership, right? He's the one taking all the bullets and all the heat from a decision that they clearly made. And this is how the whole thing works, right? Like, everybody knows people are pulling the strings behind Trump or Biden or some of these other people. And, even the people in the media make reference to it occasionally or something, not really all that much. But they still play along with it, right? They still go along and say, fire Nico or fire Trump or fire Biden, when there's just this whole level of hidden power that's really making the decisions.
With stocks tumbling right now, all three indices showing sharp declines today. Let's go live to CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich. Vanessa, walk us through what's behind this decline.
Well, markets opened rattled this morning because Beijing was essentially putting pressure on their trading partners not to work with the U.S. On essentially not trading with China any longer. And then after that, there was a Truth Social post by President Trump that came out, which sort of rattled markets again. And that's why you're seeing that steep decline. The Dow down 1,100 points now. But you can see the post right there where he's essentially calling on the Federal Reserve to cut rates. This is something that the president really has no power doing. And when he talks about...
So here he is. Preemptive cuts in interest rates are being called for by many. With energy costs way down, food prices, including Biden's eggs disaster, substantially lowered, and other things trending down, there's virtually no inflation. With these costs trending so nicely downward, just when I predicted they would there almost be no inflation. But there can be a slowing of the economy unless Mr. Too Late, a major loser, lowers interest rates now. Europe has already lowered several times. Powell has always been too late, except when it came to the election period, when he lowered in order to help Sleepy Joe and later Kamala get elected. How did that work out? Called the guy a loser. The guy who's in charge of the Fed, who doesn't answer to the president, right? And so... this was from April 21st, is a few days ago. But,
It's about Mr. Too Late. He's talking about the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell.
Oh, that's so funny.
And when he talks about Mr. Too Late, he's talking about the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell. Over the last week or so, he's really ratcheted up his pressure on the Fed chair, essentially calling for...
Okay, so here's the thing. This is why like, if you understand there's a shadow government, you understand there's a plan. Like, there's all these people who think that immigration is being used to destroy America. And these various things that have been done over these years, the Ukrainian war, the stuff with Israel and Gaza, any number of these issues, things to do with the economy, is they want to take America down. And then you have the WEF that Trump appeared in front of when he was, first elected. Like 2 days after he was elected, he went to WEF, who said by 2030, in 5 years from now, you'll own nothing and like it. So that's, they're going to be selling you this Agenda 31 housing things, and they're already building these 15-minute cities, all this stuff, right? And so people in the truth community have documented all this stuff. I'm not all that aware of it as much as, I covered a little bit, but I understand what's going to happen regardless of any of that, right? And so, there's that element that there's no indication that they wanted to preserve your lifestyle. And I said this 3 years ago in a video, and, I knew this years and years ago just because I knew, and then the stuff to do with the predictions and the Sagemark system and, whatever it might be. That there's also, I made a video and said, why would God want to save this system? And not one person had an answer for me, like not a valid answer. Why would God actually want to save this system? Or divine beings, why would this system be worth saving? And so if you think about that, divinity and the people who control the system are 100% in about bringing it down and changing your lifestyle, getting you to accept a lesser deal. And that's just the way it is. It's going to happen. And so if that's the goal, then Trump isn't going to fight those guys off and save the country. They put him in there to destroy it, right? Like they didn't like, oh, we're going to execute this plan of bringing down the world economy and bringing down the American lifestyle. But you know what? Let's let this guy get elected who's got the capability of bringing us down, because we're that stupid, right? Like they know what they're doing. So Trump isn't here to save the economy, which would be silly. He isn't here to save America. He's here to bring the whole thing down. And it should be fairly obvious to everybody because of the way he's acting. So everything that he does is being endorsed by them, and some of it might even be recommended or ordered by them. Like we don't know how much is him just doing it on his own, or just Trump being Trump. But either way, this is what's happening now. And he is like Nico Harrison. He is the fall guy for this. Like everyone's going to blame him and his tariffs and his other bullshit plans. And even if there are things that could have worked, they will make them not work. They will manipulate the financial markets in such a way that even if he had good ideas, which he doesn't, the tariffs is a horrible idea. But even if it had, even if it could be beneficial in some way, for one, he's never going to do it like in a subtle way where it would be 1 or 2%, a little boost to the economy, something that's stable. He's going off the charts. He's getting into it with China now, got into it with Canada, getting into it with the Federal Reserve chief. And that just creates instability. And whenever there's infighting and whenever there's conflict, it destroys businesses, it destroys teams, it destroys countries. And he's, the epitome of infighting. And so, and we're going to get into his other stuff with this, just his whole administration. There's a total lack of confidence in it. And now the mainstream media gets to be right. And they're not right. They suck, right? They just happen to be a part of this. They knew what Trump was being used for. And they just waited around for him to go full Trump. And now they can say, hey, look, we warned you. And then, we got to censor these other people and, all these things that they want to get done. And so, this is not, it's just, bogus.
Or his termination, saying if I could terminate him at some point, I will. The president appointed Jerome Powell in his first term. President Biden re-upped him for his second term.
Okay, so he's a Trump appointee. And Trump didn't have any problems with him his first term, but now he's not helping out. And, so here, my wife sent me this last night.
I think that right now we are at a decision-making point and very close to a recession. And I'm worried about something worse than a recession if this isn't handled well. A recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP, and whether it goes slightly there, we always have those things. We have something that's much more profound. We have a breaking down of the monetary order. We are going to change the monetary order because we cannot spend the amounts of money, so we have that problem. And when we talk about the dollar and we talk about tariffs, we have that. We are having profound changes in our domestic order, how ruling is existing. And we're having profound changes in the world order. Such times are
Like it's almost like a new world order.
very much like the 1930s. I've studied history, and this
That's when the Depression happened.
repeats over and over again. So if you take tariffs, if you take debt, if you take the rising power challenging the existing power, if you take those factors and look at the factors, those changes in the orders, the systems, are very, very disruptive. How that's handled could produce something that is much worse than a recession. I think.
Okay, so here's the thing. You know, they would never allow one leader to come in. I mean, this is a very controlled world government, you know, where all these intertwined markets and all these things, right? It affects everybody. Remember when there was a the collapse of the Japanese currency or whatever happened that, you know, that preceded the 2008 economic collapse. You know, just it takes one country to just have an economic meltdown. It affects everybody. And certainly America, that would just be a disaster for the whole world economy. And so they're not going to let some president come in and mess all that up. You know, Trump has a number of handlers, Israel, people like Jamie Dimon, bankers. You know, Jamie Dimon and Mark Zuckerberg, my wife was telling me, both sold stocks right before Trump started his Trump bullshit, right? And so, you know, we were joking about how when Trump said, you know, Palestinians are just lucky, you know, or just unlucky. And we were like, they were just lucky. You know, like, you know, some people are just lucky, some people are not, you know. And we always joke around like that because it's, you know, so absurd what he said. But these handlers would go to Trump and say, you can't do that. You know, the stock market, people like that. They would have stopped him from doing this. And so they're not doing it because there's only one valid reason, and that's they want him to destroy the country and the economy because, you know, it has to be done. And he's somebody they can blame. You know, this can all be piled on him and his supporters. And it's happening. Like, it's in the works right now. Like, everyone's seeing it. Like, it's literally right in front of everybody. Again, he's the Nico Harrison of the, you know, the world destruction.
We want to have as many bees as we can to make honey.
At Secret Garden Bees, a honey farm in Linden, North Carolina, farmer Jim Hartman has one eye.
Hey, I'll hold my beer and watch this.
On his bees and the other on his bank account.
Ideally, we'll get 100 pounds of honey per hive per year.
How do you feel about paying more for things?
Well, you know, if you find someone who says, I'm happy about paying more for something, you point them out to me. People who already couldn't afford fresh vegetables, who couldn't already afford to put good food on their plate, are the ones that are really going to be hurt by this.
Did you ever think when you voted for President Trump that things were going to cost you more and you were going to lose money?
I never thought I was going to lose this much money, this fast.
Jim.
So this is a Republican voter guy who voted for Trump. And, you know, this is what they're going to do. They're going to find these people, and their people exist. And there's going to be more of them down the road because this is, you know, the plan is clear, right? Trump is an idiot who's tanking the economy, and he's going to be blamed for whatever comes next, which is, you know, things that people don't want to have happen. And it's just, you know, it's right there in front of us. Like, it's set up. Like, it's just going to go in this way. You know, it's like you're watching a game and the team's down, like, let's say it's a basketball game, and they're down 10 points, then they're down 15 points, and you can just tell the other team is, you know, just has better energy and has a better game plan, and they're just playing better. It's their night, and the other team's sluggish, and, you know, and you're like, oh, maybe they'll come back, and then it's just like, you know, you fast forward the game if you recorded it, and the team's up 30, and then they're up 40, and it's like, well, there's no chance the game's over. But, like, you know, in the beginning, you kind of sense it's going to be a blowout. You know, sometimes there's these comebacks, and you're like, well, maybe there'll be one of those comebacks, but you kind of know there's not going to be one. And we're in those early stages of a blowout, right? This is going to go exactly the way that it looks like it's going to go because Trump is that guy. There's no solution because even if he was great, which he isn't, and even if he was capable of doing and fixing the world or the country the way he wants to, which he can't, there isn't a solution for, right? Like he could be the greatest president in the world and he couldn't fix this thing. It's not fixable. So I want to get into the Pete Hegseth thing here. But first, there's a couple other people in Trump's administration. It just shows the level of just chuckleheadness, right?
One of the nation's top law enforcement officials falling victim to theft. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was out to dinner with her family Sunday night at the Capitol Burger restaurant in downtown D.C. when a law enforcement source tells me a man came in, took her bag, and then left. Now, inside that bag were her DHS Access badge, credit cards, her house keys, a passport, makeup, and $3,000 in cash. Now, CNN caught up with Noem on Monday outside the White House at an event.
Was your bag stolen last night at dinner? It was. Can you tell me any details about that? I don't think I can yet.
Now, on that large...
Just bizarre. She's the head of the Department of Homeland Security, and someone just came and lifted her bag at an upscale burger place in the center of D.C. She walks around with all this bulletproof stuff and armor, and machine guns and all this gear that she has. And some guy just comes up and steals her purse. Like she wants to be a badass that shoots dogs in the head and all this stuff. And she just gets lifted.
Sum of cash inside the bag. A DHS spokesperson told CNN that Noem's entire family was in town, including her children and grandchildren. She was using the withdrawal to treat her family to dinner, activities, and Easter gifts. This remains under investigation by the Secret Service. The source told me that one key aspect they're looking at is trying to trace those credit cards to see if they're used. One of the nation's
so that's just, that's weird. Then this Pam Bondi
has called him a Maryland man. Every liberal journalist who has called him a Maryland man and saying he was rightfully in this country should be apologizing tonight to President Trump.
They're really big on people apologizing. They don't apologize and admit they're wrong for shit. And they do horrible things and hurt people. I mean, all the things that Trump said about the Palestinian people he should apologize for. I mean, it's more than that. Like, apologies, way beyond an apology. It's just whatever, right? But, no one's saying that the guy isn't in here illegally. I mean, maybe some people are saying on, the internet, but in terms of media, it's, again, it's not what this is about. But then she goes into this.
Trump. America is safer because he is gone tonight to President Trump. America is safer because he is gone. Maryland is safer because he is gone. And that woman that he is married to and that child he had with her, they are safer tonight because...
You mean his child? And so is the mom reporting there was child abuse or physical abuse on her part? Well, there's no criminal charges against the guy, right? So there was nothing there, right? Like he was working to better, like he was getting educated to better support his family. And this is the story that we've heard, like just, whatever the, I mean, whatever it is, there's no charges. Like there's no charges that he was charged for, like domestic abuse or something like that, right? And if there was, he probably would be deported. Because what happens when the cops show up at a person's house and there's a domestic abuse type situation and they arrest the guy and they find he's got no social security number and he's not an American citizen, like what would happen to that guy? Would he not be deported? So again, but he doesn't have any criminal charges. So, she's saying these things like, the guy was here illegally. That's true. And he could easily and rightfully be deported to El Salvador, where he's from. And that's true, right? There was some court case, the judge said that he couldn't go back to El Salvador, and I don't know what that's about. Some gang was after him. She's going to address that here.
Because he is out of our country and sitting in El Salvador where he belongs. Initially, he claimed there was a rival gang. So he's saying he's a gang member. There's a rival gang in El Salvador, which no longer exists, by the way, that could have hurt him if he had...
What does that mean? So he made it up? What are you talking about? It no longer exists.
Gone back to El Salvador. So there was no ending for him, none, where he would end up staying in this country. And President Bukele made it crystal clear.
There are people who are saying, feeling like this guy is some saint, like they're turning this guy into a George Floyd or something, right? somebody who has, whatever. The guy definitely committed a crime by coming to America, but he's not. He's in jail with not going to any sort of due process here or in El Salvador, which is the big issue, right? Because when you start locking people up and just claiming they're criminals, this is exactly the kind of shit Trump would do. Trump's all for violating people's constitutional or their due process rights, their Miranda rights and the rest of them. He just wants people to be locked up and beat the shit out of them. He said that at a rally. It's too bad we just can't beat the shit out of these guys, hecklers and things, right? So, Trump is all for this kind of thing. That's the issue.
Clear that he is not returning him to our country.
Just so dopey, right? She's so dopey and they're just goofy and not, they never answered the questions about the real issue. And then there was this meme. Pam Bondi action figure, Epstein's list, arrests made. So good for you, Pam. I call Jen Psaki for a reason, because she sucks at her job. She's stiff, awkward, she's not good at it, right? She may be getting better. I don't know. I haven't seen her in a while, but she gets to mock the shit out of this guy in a moment. I'm going to show you 2 segments, one from CNN and one from MSNBC. And there's lots more out there. It's just so much. But they're all saying the same thing. But Jen Psaki said something which I went to see because I hadn't heard it before. And this motherfucker 5 years ago said this.
As I told you, my 2019 resolution is to say things on air that I say off air. I don't think I've washed my hands for 10 years. Really, I don't really wash my hands ever.
Help me!
What? I mean, we're not talking about OCD here. It's just so fucking weird. He hasn't washed his hands for 10 years?
No, I inoculate myself. It's just not, germs are not a real thing. I can't see them, therefore they're not real.
So you're becoming immune?
Okay, so he can't see them, so therefore they're not real. So that's what we're working with here, right? So I'm pretty sure that Pete Hegseth has probably had a sexually transmitted disease. You can't see that either, Pete. You're taking antibiotics. You can't see those, right? You take the pill, but those are germs. I mean, those are bacteria. So whatever it is, I don't fucking know. And so you get the point here. So let's start here before we go to Jen Psaki.
Today, we are learning some new details following reports of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth sharing some detailed military plans in a second Signal group chat that included his wife, a lawyer, and his brother. Multiple sources telling CNN Hegseth revealed strike plans against Houthi targets in Yemen, similar to what was shared in that other group chat, which came to light after the editor of The Atlantic was mistakenly added to it. We've also learned that Hegseth directly addressed the matter with President Trump during a phone call last night. Earlier today, the president defended Hegseth.
He's doing a great job. It's just fake news. They just bring up stories. I guess it sounds like disgruntled employees. He was putting...
Okay, so it's none of those things, right? So there is real fake news, which we're all aware of. And CNN and MSNBC are some of the biggest fake news producers, Fox, and then everybody else in different degrees. But it's not just fake news. It's a news with an agenda. News with a purpose, and the agenda is usually to screw you over in one way or another, the viewer. And so, the people on the left and the news media pushed all their chips into the center, and they never do this. The Democratic Party and the people on the left pushed all their chips into the center of the fucking table, and they said, we're betting that Trump is going to be a piece of shit dictator on day one, Agenda 2025, and when he does do his Trump stuff, the country's going to implode. And you guys, we're going to say, not only we told you so, but you're going to have no other alternative but to come back and look at us as legitimate. And that's what Trump's done to all of us. Because Trump said, follow me, I'm going to make America great again. Just trust me. This is what I'm going to do. Don't listen to all these other people. They're all lies. It's all fake news. I hire the best people. I do the best work. I'm just this incredible guy, and I alone can save America, and I'm going to do it. And it's either going to go his way or it's not. If it doesn't, they're going to win, right? Both put their chips on the table. They're betting against Trump. They shorted Trump, right? The Democrats, they've bet against Trump, and Trump's bet on himself, and the American people have bet on Trump. Trump really hasn't bet on himself in terms of you. He bet on himself in terms of monetizing his presidency and being taken care of by the powers that be, the handlers, for doing excellent work by being the fall guy for something that they know has to happen, but that no one wants to be the person or group to do it, which is to take the America down and the world economy down. And so this is when he says fake news, he's fucking all of us. Because this isn't fake news, right? I mean, whatever is real about this, they either did it intentionally. This is part of a plan. It's part of a show. It has nothing to do with really, there's no organic part to it. And Pete Hegseth and Trump and all these people are just actors. There's that possibility. And then, it's not 100%. It can be in degrees. That they're actors, but they also believe in what they're doing. They're actors, but they're also buying into their role. They're semi-actors. They've been handled. They take suggestion from their handlers, whatever it is, right? But the other possibility is they're just this bad at everything. And so this is what I was talking about. This guy is, Trump being the fall guy, and this thing all being, everyone knowing that there's people behind Trump, there's money behind, not everybody, but at least all of us do. And yet, falling for the show, right?
There to get rid of a lot of bad people, and that's what he's doing. So you don't always have friends when you do that.
The revelation of a second signal chat emerging as some of Hegseth's closest advisors, several of whom were fired last week, are warning that the Pentagon has become dysfunctional under Hegseth's leadership. Both Hegseth and White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt railed against those accusations.
This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees.
Former employees? I'm not to wash my hands. Former employees.
This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their...
He's totally triggered and he's totally shook. The guy's totally rattled here. Everything's falling apart there. And, that's the story. Whether it's true or not, but these are the people that he chose to work with them, right?
Reputations.
The president stands strongly behind Secretary Hegseth, who is doing a phenomenal job leading the Pentagon. And this is what happens when the entire Pentagon is working against you and working against the monumental change that you are trying to implement.
The entire Pentagon is working against you. So she's saying that the entire Pentagon is working against him. Now, this is a real fucked up thing to say on many levels. I mean, think about what you just said. Let's listen to this. Whoop. Again. I was going to use C word there.
Working against the monumental change.
Oh, let's go back a little bit more.
What happens when the entire Pentagon is working against you and working against the monumental change that you are trying to implement?
Okay, so that's just so fucked up, right? Because the thing about it is you can't fire the entire Pentagon. And the majority of the people at the Pentagon are not Democrats. The soldiers and the people who are in the military almost always vote Republican. I mean, the people who are engaged in even the people in the intelligence community, all these people, they're not liberals and they're not Democrats, right? They're very warlike people. They're people who the Republican Party has always been the party of the military, and the majority of the people in the military voted for Trump. And so a great number of them, people who work at the Pentagon, are Trumpers, and they're Republicans. And so she's saying that they're all working against this change. Many of the people who voted for Trump wanted the things that Pete Hegseth said he was going to do. He was very popular amongst those people because they may have watched him on Fox News or some of his other things that he did, his pro-military stuff. And so to say the Pentagon's against him means that he must suck so bad that even though they believe in his policies and Trump's policies, he's fucking it up, right? Because, they shouldn't be against him. They're not Democrats. They're not all liberals. They're not all these people that are, voted for Joe Biden. I mean, they think that Joe Biden wrecked the military. Many people in the military feel like the Democrats always wreck the military, especially what they're doing with all this other bullshit. Maybe a few of the higher up people, some of the twisted ones, some of the ones who are, into those cherry Marines, as that one woman said, the woman wife of some colonel said that these guys, a lot of them were having like sex with the Marines, the male Marines, this stuff, whatever. If you believe K Gribbs or something, the video that was up on YouTube for a while, I don't know if it's still there, and believe that or not. But the other piece to it is your job is to go and sell this to these people. If they are against you, you can't go into an agency with no experience and just very little, fucking stupid, doesn't fucking wash his hands, doesn't believe in germs, weird fucking guy, alcoholic, all these things, right? All these accusations of who he is as a person, poor character qualities, and zero experience in the Pentagon, and probably doesn't know a lot of these people going into it. And so you have to win them over. It's like a new coach going in there. You don't go in when the coach comes in and you don't see the coach's wife come out and say, it's really hard to win when everyone on the team is against you. What? Then they're going to fire you. They're not going to fire the team. They're not going to fire the players, right? And so, you got an entire organization there that there's thousands upon thousands of people that work in the Pentagon, and you got to get them to buy in. And to say that they're all working against him, then he has zero chance of success. Like, this is just really stupid, her saying this.
Phenomenal job leading the Pentagon. And this is what happens when the entire Pentagon is working against you and working against the monumental change that you are trying to implement.
She sounds like a toddler or like an 8th grader. Like some 8th grader who doesn't know anything but has arrogance and is trying to kids-splain shit to adults which doesn't know anything, hasn't lived a life. And like she expects people to believe their bullshit. Like, that's just stupid. Like, it's like they're so immature. They're so fucking remedial.
With us now to talk more about this is John Bolton. He served as National Security Advisor during President.
This guy's a piece of shit. Warmongering piece of shit with his porn stash. One of the people I dislike. I mean, he's the most unlikable guy of all those neocons, and all those neocons suck, right? But he gets to be right because he came down on Trump and he said these things were going to happen. These people are all getting credibility because Trump is giving them credibility, right? Because of all the things they said about him and his policies.
President Trump's first term. How bad do you think this is, I wonder, having his wife, his brother, his lawyer included on what sources describe as military plans of these Houthi strikes, similar to what came to light during that first Signal chat scandal?
Well, I think after people got over the disbelief at the first Signal chat group, it's no surprise there are others. What makes this one worse and different is that it's kind of a friends and family Signal chat group, none of whom have any need to know what's been conveyed about potential strikes in Yemen before they actually happen. I mean, it speaks to a lack of judgment on Hegseth's part. And when you look at the controversy over the people recently being fired, by the way, all of whom are people he hired.
Okay, so they're whining about these people being fired. They're saying that these people are all disgruntled employees. These were all his people. These were people who believed in his vision and Trump's vision. People close to him, people in his inner circle. And one of them, or one or many of them, have ratted him out for doing this because they see that he's a train wreck. Like, they go in there with high hopes and belief in him and Trump, and then this guy just fucking starts screwing up and being a complete putz. And they come out. Again, this is the official story. It might be staged, it could be scripted, whatever. That is whatever it is. It's impossible to prove one way or another. But this is the official story, right? And they're saying these guys are disgruntled employees. No, this is whistleblowers who can't believe how bad you suck, bro. So that's what's happening here. And the news media, like I said, they get validation here. And people are going to go back to the Democrats, the independents and people, and they'll go back to mainstream media because now They see that their fucking 401k is gone and Trump is a fucking disaster. I just saw this little clip. I'll get off the TV later for tomorrow's video. This guy's just laughing and mocking. You know, they finally came out and said, yeah, this is a bad idea. You know, the fucking Secretary of the Treasury, and stocks go up miraculously. I mean, they're openly talking about depression now because Trump's a fucking disaster. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, right? Or he's following a script and playing a role as a stooge. Doesn't matter. The effects are the same, right? And so, you know, like this is not, I mean, they're not to be able to defend what they're doing here. Okay, Jen Psaki.
I can tell you that when you're working in government and Bob Woodward's number pops up on your phone, which has happened to me, your heart rate picks up a little bit. No matter.
Oh my God. This is how Jen Psaki sucks so bad, right? But like, she doesn't have to make shit up now. She doesn't have to do fake news because Trump is providing what they've been waiting for, right? He's giving them what they wanted, right? Whenever somebody's creating a profile, this is how Alex Jones screwed the truth community. So the media and the powers that be were creating a narrative of people who put out alternative media, that they were right-wing nut jobs who were unhinged, who were like potentially violent, screaming like a demon, you know, all this Alex Jones stuff. And they weren't checking the facts. They were making up shit and all the things that Alex Jones did. And then he went on that Piers Morgan fucking disastrous interview and he gave them everything that they wanted to have this narrative, right? So the media and the Democrats and the intelligence community have all created a narrative of Trump and Trumpers and then linked it to the rest of us. And so this is how they're going to be able to silence people in the future when you and I get blamed for Trump's fucking disastrous policies, including and not excluding the tariffs and all these other things, right? And so, you know, and then she gets to be right because it's all part of a plan, right?
16.
Let's go back to this.
At the table in just a few minutes. But first, I want to show you something he said the last time we spoke, because it was right after the election, just a few weeks after. And one of the things we talked about was the glaring incompetence of the people Donald Trump was picking for his cabinet. People like Pete Hegseth.
I have known over the reporting time I've had for 5 decades.
Boy, look at these fucking ghouls they went out. Like, Jesus Christ.
16 secretaries of defense, going back even before I was reporter Robert McNamara. And they have to know management. They have to know what the responsibility is. They have to know where the levers of power are. And in this appointee, I see none of that.
16 secretaries of defense. I see none of that, is what he said.
You know, because he's not real. Like, yeah, great, but he's not a real one. Like, none of these people are real journalists. So, Bob Woodward, it was his big claim to fame, Woodward and Bernstein, was they broke the Watergate bullshit thing where they were young, and who knows how much that was contrived as well. Who knows any of that was some sort of fake news stuff. But it was more believable back then, and these people at least thought they had integrity, right? These people at least got trained as professional journalists, and they at least got some training in morals and ethics from their religions and whatever else was. Like, the people were more trustworthy, and they had better characters. And, you know, all that stuff has gone south, and Bob Woodward has gone south with it, right? So, but she still gets to be right, because what he's saying is 100% true. This guy's fucking unqualified.
He said. And yet it didn't take an investigative mind like Bob Woodward's to know that Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense might be slightly problematic. I mean, before running the U.S. military, he was a weekend morning show host on Fox News with a reputation for going years without washing his hands, which, by the way, is his admission, just to make it even weirder.
You know, and I heard that. I'm like, how would that's possible? Like, that's unbelievable that somebody would not wash their hands, right? You're, at the very least, your hands never get fucking dirty, right? My hands are dirty all the fucking time. I'm working outside doing farm work. I got dirt under my nails right fucking now, right? Actually, I don't. But I just looked at him. But, chances are, if I say that, it's going to be true. And then if you're working with any kind of these are supposed to be manly men. If you're working with any kind of, if I'm working on your equipment or you're doing anything that has grease on it or any number of things, right? If you're doing manly man type stuff, the kind of stuff that Trump supporters, Trump male supporters would be doing, you'd have grease on your hands, dirt on your, just things from, doing labor around the house, cutting the lawn, any of these things, right? And so it's fucking weird. It's just fucking weird.
And no shade to cable news hosts, obviously. Even ones who get a little crazy on New Year's Eve, you can see there. It's not a job that exactly prepares you to run the Pentagon as your next step. There were also
well, you guys are mocking him, but have you ever seen Don Lemon's on New Year's Eve?
the countless allegations of Hegseth drinking on the job, both at veterans organizations and at Fox News. The New Yorker reported he once got so drunk that he had to be restrained from getting on a stage at a Louisiana strip club. There were the allegations that he ran those relatively small veterans organizations into the ground financially. And of course, there were the allegations about his abuse of women, including his second wife. He didn't.
One of those things there said, this one, sexual impropriety and personal misconduct. And so the New Yorker,
of overseeing the Defense Department. And so when we saw this headline at the end of March, it was one of those things that was both shocking but kind of unsurprising. And the very first paragraph of Jeffrey Goldberg's story was, again, both shocking but entirely unsurprising in a lot of ways. I mean, here's what it said, quote, "The world found out shortly before 2 p.m. Eastern time on March 15th that the United States was bombing
we saw that stuff.
Houthi targets across Yemen. I, however, knew 2 hours before the first bombs exploded that the attack might be coming. The reason I knew this is that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, had texted me the war plan at 11:44 a.m. The plan included precise information about weapons, packages, targets, and timing."
Just think about this for a moment. What it was like when someone said, this happened. Again, if it's not part of a plan and that guy isn't Mossad, there's some other fucking, who knows? There's so much fuckery going on, so much skullduggery. But if this just happened legitimately, they boneheaded it and they did this. Let's say, this was just a mistake on their part. And then this report comes out and then they hear about it. When you've really fucked up, and this is, embarrassing, nationally embarrassing. You're embarrassing the president. You're embarrassing the fucking government. You're embarrassing America. You're certainly embarrassing yourself. This level where it's going to be national news. And they're going to talk about it for fucking, almost 3 days because Trump was going to do something else stupid. But, or somebody in Trump's world. But think about the shame and embarrassment you would naturally feel if this kind of fuck up, right? And then the military, you're supposed to be a military guy, and you're like, oh my God, them all the troops, all the people in the military, all the grunts, all the guys who are they would be court-martialed for this, are going to be pissed off and feel like, again, I don't know if they have that level of consciousness, but that's all those things are going to happen, right? All those things are real, and it's like a massive fuck up.
Well, a few hours after that story was published, Jeffrey Goldberg was here at this table, and we watched together as Pete Hegseth looked straight into the camera and lied about what Jeffrey Goldberg knew to be true.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that.
I'm going to be responsible here and not disclose the things that I read and saw. I will describe them to you. The specific time of a future attack, specific targets, including human targets, meant to be killed in that attack, weapon systems, even weather reports.
Now, as you know, eventually Goldberg did release the screenshots of what Hegseth texted him, laying out in explicit detail the weaponry and sequencing involved with that attack. And even after those screenshots were released, Hegseth kept on lying.
I noticed this morning, out came something that doesn't look like war plans. And as a matter of fact, they even changed the title to attack plans.
He's such a child, right? Like, remember this whole thing?
Because they know it's not war plans. There's no units, no locations, no routes, no flight paths, no sources, no methods, no classified information.
I mean, I've watched that clip a lot of times. It's almost like the louder he talks, the more believable he thinks it will be, I guess. I don't know. But even though we knew he was lying, even though we knew he had texted war plans to a reporter or attack plans, whatever you want to call them, he kept his job. Trump defended him. Republicans in Congress didn't do a whole lot. And despite the fact that there were obviously other signal chats with classified information on them, that story kind of faded into the background, in part because Donald Trump decided to tank the global economy. And also...
So, I mean, like this, she gets to say all this stuff. You know, I said this was going to happen. I didn't know he was going to tank the global economy. I didn't know what tariffs were going to do. I didn't know any of these things, right? But I knew that there'd be another story that would blow that story up and make that story irrelevant. And I knew Trump wasn't going to hold this guy accountable and no one was going to get fired. Like, it was very clear in the beginning. I said, no, you know, probably no one's going to get fired. This is going to disappear until the next time, right? And there'll be a next time because there always is with this fucking guy and his fucking people, right?
So ship people to foreign prisons without any charges. My point is, there were a lot of pressing stories to cover. But over the past few days, we started to get this sense that something else might be coming out of Pete Hegseth's Pentagon. Because on Friday, top officials of the Pentagon started getting fired. And they started getting fired for, wait for it, this is almost my favorite detail, leaking. And believe me, the irony...
So this is where this came from. So I was wondering who leaked it. You know, there was these people who were anonymous sources. So he ends up firing 5 people that he hired. All of those were his hires. All of these people were Trumpers. All these people were on board with the plan. All these people were ready to go. And he fucking, you know, he fires them, right? All right, so, and then they say they leaked something, which you can't do from the Pentagon. So they're either leaking classified information, which would be a crime, you know, an imprisonable offense, or they're leaking shit about his incompetence, which is the case, right? They're leaking shit about him leaking information that's classified. And it's something that there was a second degree fuck up.
Irony is only going to get richer as we keep telling this story. 3 Pentagon officials close to Hegseth, his former senior advisor, Dan Caldwell, former Deputy Chief of Staff, Jaron Selnick, and the Deputy Defense Secretary's Chief of Staff, Colin Carroll, confirmed they were placed on administrative leave. On Friday, we also learned that Joe Casper, Hegseth's own Chief of Staff, would be transferring to a different role in the Pentagon. And John Elliott, another senior Pentagon official, also said he resigned last week, although the Pentagon said they asked him to resign. So lots of firings, a bunch of resignations, apparently about leaks. So yeah, it kind of felt like something was coming. Well, lo and behold, late yesterday afternoon, the New York Times dropped a bombshell report about another signal chat. The Times writes, quote, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth shared detailed information about forthcoming strikes in Yemen on March 15th in a
Okay, so we know all this stuff.
Role that directly involves military operations and for good.
Go back a second.
Does work at the Pentagon, although he is not anywhere near a role that directly involves military operations.
Okay, so this right here.
Houthis in Yemen. Essentially the same attack plans that he shared on a separate signal chat the same day that mistakenly included the editor of The Atlantic. Now, Hegseth's brother Phil does work at the Pentagon, although he is not anywhere near a role that directly involves military operations, and for good reason. As the AP reports, based on Phil Hegseth's publicly available resume, his past experience includes founding his own podcast production company and working on social media and podcasts at the Hudson Institute. That said, Phil the podcaster might have some kind of security clearance. We really don't know.
So then you get to mock him for this, right? And so, you know, again, his brother's like in the media in a sense. So they leaked this to 2 different people in 2 different, there's 2 different spectrums or ends or the polar opposite ends of the media spectrum. One is his brother, who's a podcaster, and the other guy's a very liberal, hostile to Trump reporter for publisher from the Atlantic. But Jesus Christ, right? Like, this is all, again, she doesn't have to make anything up, right? She doesn't have to do fake news. She doesn't have to suck. She can just come out and say what happened. Because what happened is horrible. And this isn't fake news, right? This is real shit that's happened, because what he's doing is playing fast and loose with all of these things, right? With all of the, the rules. See, these guys are so arrogant. Again, the official story, whether they're acting in a role, but this guy was on Fox, some guy who doesn't wash his hands. They think the rules don't apply to them. They think they're somehow above the law. And everybody in the military knows that rules are very important, and discipline is mandatory. And you have to follow those rules when you engage in handling of classified materials. But it's, all the other things that he's doing, and they're like, well, our vision is so bold, and the changes that we're bringing to the military are so great, and we're so great, and Trump is so great, that we are above the law. We're above the rules, and everyone's out to get us. Everyone in the Pentagon's trying to stop us from making all these great changes. And so this is their bullshit, right? They believe this bullshit. At least if they're not actors, if this is, not an act, they actually buy into this bullshit. But all the people there are like, no, rules are important. You don't know what the fuck you're doing. And they have an established culture, and he's trying to blow up the culture, and he's completely boneheaded and incompetent, just like Trump is trying to blow up the economy, and he's boneheaded and incompetent. They're not thorough. This guy's an addict, right? He's got, addictive tendencies, certainly with his alcohol abuse, but also his womanizing, abusive tendencies. And, the guy's just like a frat boy. I mean, this guy I pegged as being the worst of all Trump's picks, just by the way he was acting, the way he presented. The person, when they go into a psychological assessment, you notice the way that they present. This person presented as this, right? So this guy's a fucking, he's a total nightmare. And, at least as a character, but, you can't fake the stuff that he presents psychologically. The insecurities and the arrogance and the, I'm above the law bullshit that him and Trump both, that's not an act.
As for Hegseth's wife, well, she has already been kind of a point of contention. You see, Jennifer Hegseth does not actually work for the Department of Defense. And yet we know that she has been sitting in on sensitive meetings. As the Wall Street Journal reported just last month, quote, one of the meetings, a high-level discussion, took place at a sensitive moment for the transatlantic alliance, one day after the U.S. said it had cut off military intelligence sharing with Ukraine. The group discussed the U.S. rationale behind that decision. The Pentagon has been asked in the past about whether Jennifer, a former Fox News producer, has a security clearance. I don't know why she would, but who knows? They have declined to answer the question, which is quite telling on its own. But here's the thing. Even if both Jennifer, the wife, and Phil, the podcaster, do have security clearances.
Jesus Christ. This is good mockery.
There's no reason for the defense secretary to be texting them attack plans and details about a military operation. Because typically the people who have access to this type of information are categorized as need to know. And if you're in the need to...
and I said all this stuff, right? There's no substitute for experience. Like, there's things that I just can't know. Having not worked in the military, been part of the military, I can understand it from my, my brother was a military person, and just, various other things, right? Like, I'm not a businessman, and I don't have a good business mind. So I'm really not going to figure out all the things in terms of tariffs, like, beforehand, especially when it doesn't really, there's no reason to even look into it, because Trump says he's going to do shit all the time, and then he either can't do it or won't do it, right? Like, so... the thing about, like, anything that Trump says, you don't really need to research it until he does it. And if you chased every little, Trump's a bullshitter. If you chased every little bullshit thing he does or says he's going to do, and it'd just be a waste of your time. And so now that the terrorists have manifested in the way that he's handled it, you can just see the incompetence, and then it starts to make sense, right? And then things that I couldn't have known before. But if I had a business where I was manufacturing something and I needed supplies, I needed raw materials from China, or I needed something to be manufactured in China, as a small business person, you'd be fucked. And so these people that Trump is supposed to be saving are people who are, he's fucking over right now. Like they say they love America. This guy says he loves the military, but he's fucking the military over right now. I mean, he's just destroying it with doing stupid shit, right? And saying that he's above the law because he shouldn't be handling this information like that. He shouldn't be telling his wife about it. He shouldn't be. And if he is telling her, it should be done not on a fucking social media app and bringing her to meetings. You might say something to your significant others, but the way he burns through wives, he's had 3 fucking wives already, and one of them at least has possibly claimed abuse, 2 of his ex-wives, and a woman, all these women that he's been cheating on with his wives. He cheated on one of his wives with his current wife, and then he cheated on both of them with a woman accused him of sexual assault. And so the guy's a fucking mess. And these, wives that he has, I mean, at any moment they could be his ex-wife, and he's telling them all kinds of shit, and who knows how that'll play out, right? And, this kind of toxic personality. And so these guys who claim to love America are fucking destroying it. And I don't know if they are willfully doing it and they're doing it as part of a plan and they're just good at acting and deceiving, which I can't imagine to be the case. But I know why the controllers want it done, right? I know why the controllers want to bring down the economy, because the debt-based system is like it's insolvent. It can't be fixed. It can't be made, to work. It can't be made to continue this, continue the trajectory it's on, right? So all the reasons, not just that, the population problem, the everything that these guys know about, they won't tell you, but they'll show you their plan. They've already showed us their plan over and over again. And, that's bring down America, bring down the world economy, reduce the population, rely more on robot technology and these types of things. And so, that's all in the works. And so, these guys they're stooges, whether they're in on it or not. They're executing what they want, want in terms of these goals and these plans.
To know, group, it means it's essential that you have the details of the operation or classified information in order to do your jobs. Meaning just because you have a certain level of security clearance, it doesn't mean you have access to every piece of information that is in that level of security clearance. It's if you really need to know it. Generally, that group does not include a liaison officer like Phil Hegseth, and it certainly does not include the secretary's spouse. So that's
just screwing him over with these pictures.
The story broke yesterday, and then Secretary Hegseth's day got, I would say, even worse. As I mentioned just a moment ago, his former aide, a guy by the name of John Elliott, one of the staffers who quit, published an op-ed in Politico describing his month from hell, as he describes it, working for Hegseth. Elliott writes that, quote, "It's hard to see Hegseth remaining in his role for much longer," adding, quote, "The last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration." Elliott also hinted at the secretary's week getting even worse, saying, quote, and this is quite a thing to write in an op-ed, "There are very likely more shoes to drop in short order, with even bigger bombshell stories coming this week. Key Pentagon reporters have been telling sources privately." Who knows what will come? We'll see. But a former senior aide is predicting that. Now, just for some context, John Elliott is not at all some sort of undercover resistance crusader. He's the former Pentagon spokesperson, best known for a statement to ESPN defending the Pentagon's decision to wipe references to baseball legend Jackie Robinson's military service by saying, quote, "DEI is dead at the Defense Department." It's that.
So this guy, John Elliott, is a Republican. He's one of their guys. He was one of Hegseth's guys, one of these people. And he came in with the same shared beliefs and pushing this agenda. He wanted to get rid of DEI and these other things. And, this thing with Jackie Robinson was very controversial. And so this guy isn't some outsider. He's not some Biden person or some Obama person or some lifelong Pentagon person. He was brought in by this guy, right? And, they just couldn't handle the incompetence. This happened with Trump before. And all these people, John Bolton, all these other guys, that thought, even Steve Bannon, people who are, on very right-wing people that agreed with a lot of Trump's bullshit, and they couldn't stand the guy. They couldn't work with him. And the guy's just a disaster. And then all these people he's hiring are even worse in some ways because they're following along with Trump. They're just, doe-eyed people following Trump's lead. And this is what happens. The guy's a fucking disaster. He's a scammer. He's a grifter. And he's got these other grifters who have no experience or credentials running these positions. And they refuse to acknowledge that they're destroying everything. The building's collapsing around them. And they're pretending like it's somebody else's fault and it's not even happening, right?
That guy. He's also the one who took the lead in kicking a number of prominent media outlets, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN, out of their Pentagon workspaces. I mean, he's a dyed-in-the-wool MAGA guy. He probably still has his hat in his closet, or maybe he's wearing it on the weekend. I don't know. He's been with Donald Trump since the 2016 campaign. And he actually spends much of that op-ed, I quoted, lavishing praise on Trump's warped view of national security. But he draws the line at Pete Hegseth. And now at least one Republican congressman seems to share his view, saying out loud for the first time that Hegseth must go. And yet, all day long, the White House did what it always does, right before Donald Trump unceremoniously fires someone on social media. We see there's like a pattern here. They close ranks around the guy. The press secretary even took the time to deny a report that Hegseth was about to be fired. And they all just, of course, blame the media for reporting on what people inside the Pentagon told them.
So we already saw these clips, but let's watch them now, that there's more knowledge out there.
This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then
MAGA guys. 5 MAGA guys that couldn't stand you and thought you were an incompetent boob. 5 MAGA guys that they either quit or were forced to resign. They're leaking shit because they're worried you're destroying the fucking military. You know? I mean, this is, who's this guy, right?
and they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations.
It's just fake news. They just bring up stories. I guess it sounds like disgruntled employees.
This is what happens when the entire Pentagon is working against you and working against the monumental change that you are trying to implement.
The trumpet in that first few parts is quite something in the background. But that aside, I mean, the Pentagon is working against Pete Hegseth, like the entire Pentagon as an institution. Did the entire Pentagon as an institution type a signal text chain on the Secretary of Defense's personal phone that included detailed military operations and then force him to include his wife and brother? Because that would be quite a story. That would be a huge story. Of course, that's not what happened. And these are the same non-denial denials that...
Okay, so you get it. And this is, it's sad because Jen Psaki can just report stuff and she doesn't have to suck and make up things because, she doesn't have to. It's over. Trump has made fake news again, right? They've made fake news real news again. And so, and it's going to backfire on all the rest of us because it just will. So this is what Trump said about John Elliott. Why a pro-Trump ex-Pentagon official is now exiled from the MAGA movement. Donald Trump declared Monday that a pro-Trump Pentagon official who resigned last week officially exiled from our movement. The president's son issued, Donald Trump Jr. said that. The president's son issued the proclamation against ex-chief Pentagon spokesman John Elliott on social media in response to publishing an op-ed penned by Elliott that was highly critical of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, the month of hell thing that we've just heard about, and that the Pentagon is having a full-blown meltdown. And so President Donald Trump has a strong record of holding his top officials to account, given that it's hard to see Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth remain in his role for much longer, the op-ed reads, right? Elliott is a long-term Trump insider, having led communications at the National Security Council and the Department of Veterans Affairs during President Donald Trump's first term. He also was senior communications advisor for the president's 2016 campaign. So this is an insider that Trump's son now says has been exiled because he said something that everyone else fucking knows, that Pete Hegseth has to go, right? This is how fucked up it is at Trump land. But because, they expect you to swallow the truth, right? This is somebody telling the truth, that it should be obvious to everyone that Pete Hegseth was unqualified from the beginning. But you're supposed to pretend that Trump is such a brilliant fucking guy that he could possibly make a mistake by hiring somebody with no fucking experience questionable character qualities and someone who's an alcoholic, right? And, no experience at the Pentagon. And, everyone knew it was going to be a fucking disaster, but they let him go through with it anyway because no one could say no to fucking little Lord Fauntleroy Trump with his little butthurt, fragile fucking ego. And so the guy, all these people are Trumpers and they're fucking getting fired because this guy's a disaster and Trump doesn't want to fucking admit it. I mean, this is what happens in Trump land, right? Okay. Here it is. Hegseth hits back.
New pushback coming from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. In summary, he is digging in. He is not denying that he shared plans, military plans, on a signal chat with his wife and brother.
So first they say it's fake news, and they come out and say, yeah, it happened, but you're exaggerating. Well, this is all fireable offenses. And the first one was bad, but when you understand there's more to come, like this is the other level of incompetence. Because Trump's people should have said, is this fucking it? Right? Because we can survive this one. Is there fucking more? Because there's other signal shit. Is there more shit going to come out, right? Are 5 of your guys going to quit? He should have asked these other people around Hegseth, like some of these people who are, they have a relationship with him, right? This guy that wrote John Ehrlich or whatever his name was, he's been with Trump since 2016 as a MAGA guy. And so he has a relationship with him. That's why Trump put him in the position. These are Trumpers that Trump put in this position. And so they're, they should have been saying to Trump, this guy's a fucking disaster. And he's now saying there's more to come after this one. And so, they should have fired him before these things came out. And then it would have been like, it would have been a nothing burger because he's gone. They fired him. But now, like, Trump kept doubled down on him. And now this thing's come up again. It's going to be like, well, how many other things are you doing that's fucked up? And at some point you realize this guy's a fuck up, right? So.
About an operation to strike Houthis in Yemen, but he is denying that he shared any classified information and saying that no one is texting war plans. He is also slamming the 3 top Pentagon advisors who were just fired amid a leak investigation. Advisors who raised concerns about the department under Hegseth's leadership. The defense secretary, in a new interview just this morning, appears to be directly accusing them of leaking the information and calling them, quote, disgruntled former employees, something one of those now former aides denies.
Did you leak classified information against the wishes of your superiors to media outlets?
Absolutely not.
Did you photograph classified material and then text pictures of that material to an NBC News reporter?
Absolutely not.
And now we are here today. CNN's Natasha Bertrand has the very latest, and Hegseth is now speaking out in probably like the fullest comments yet regarding this second.
Okay, do they have anything from here? Yes, here. They have it here.
Are essentially trying to undermine him.
What was shared over Signal then and now, however you care.
He looks like some guy who sells like fucking that guy who does the hand chopper or some, My Pillow guy or something, like he's shilling for something, like the Home Shopping Network or something, right? Like he's like some infomercial guy.
Shared over Signal then and now, however you characterize it, was informal, unclassified coordinations. In this point, those folks who were leaking, who have been pushed out of the building, are now attempting to leak and sabotage the president's agenda and what we're doing. And that's unfortunate. It's not what I do. It's not how we operate. And so you've got another allegation being pushed again, not based on how we're operating around here.
So this is a guy's a disaster, and it's going to fucking, so you're going to fire this guy. Like, you have to fire him at some point. I mean, I don't know what the guy's doing to keep his job. But, at some point, Trump bails on you. If you cause Trump too many problems and he can scapegoat you, he will. And so, he's a fucking disaster. And there's more shit to come because he's a screw up. Like, if all these people are resigning and being fired and they're MAGA people, what about the other people? Like, there's going to be a full-out rebellion in the Pentagon, and it's going to get fucking horrible. Like, it's going to be like some sort of crisis, right? Trump is just too stupid. I think Trump's kind of checked out a little bit. I just don't think he's not curious. He doesn't want to know shit, just like he did on January 6th, and he just doesn't know what to do. Like Trump panics, and when real shit happens, because he's a grifter, when he can't bullshit his way out of something, and he's got to act, he usually almost always does the wrong thing, and he gets in crisis mode, and then he just tries to find somebody to throw under the bus, like Michael Cohen or any number of fucking his lackeys. Anyways, there's a video that I made, I don't know, 3 years ago. One of my viewers commented about watching it now. And so it's something like, it's titled like, "We all know this was coming," or something like this. We all knew this was going to happen. And so I'm going to just add it here. I watched a little bit of it. I don't know. I guess there's stuff in there that are, find interesting or not. I don't know. The title of the video is "Everyone Knows This Is Coming." Which, not everybody, but, it's, who knows why I said that. But here's the 3-year-old video.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. When you think about the way that Americans behave, Americans are wealthy people throughout the world, people who have a high level of comforts and lifestyle. For Americans, most Americans think that's how it is throughout the world. See, when you drive through like urban areas, real impoverished urban areas, or rural areas where there's poverty, you see homeless people on the street. There's a defense mechanism just to, block it off. Like you don't really see it, right? You don't register. You don't really think about it. Because people don't want to think that could be them, that's a possibility for them. And so, most people who have a middle-class lifestyle think it's just going to be like that forever. And what you see now, a big part of what you're seeing from the beast, from the system, is telling you that you can't have that anymore. That this isn't, they're reneging on their promise, because it's a promise. And I talked about this early on in this YouTube channel. This promise that the people that control the system, they gave it to our ancestors, our grandparents and great-grandparents. If you leave the farm, if you give up the agrarian lifestyle, your village, whatever, your tribe, we'll take care of you. We have a better system. You only have to work 8 hours a week. You can live in these cities with all these different advantages and things like this. You just have to, walk off the farm and we'll take care of you. You're not going to need those skills again. You're not going to need, all the things that kept you alive before. We'll take care of everything. You just get a specialized skill, work a limited amount of time, and you will have free time and a better lifestyle. And so this was the promise of the modern, whatever we have now. But that promise was not sustainable. Certainly here in America, it's not sustainable. The debt-based economy isn't sustainable. And what they didn't tell you was that people all over the world were going to suffer so you could have whatever you had in terms of your lifestyle. Their lifestyle was going to suffer. They were going to live in great poverty because you're going to have these big box stores, Walmart or whatever, and it was going to be filled with other people's stuff. People's, products from all around the world were going to be in your store, and the people producing those products were going to live horrible lives. They were going to be in these sweatshops, basically modern day slaves of a devalued currency where they would make less than a living wage and they would work long hours. So, it was, and so there's just this ignorance in people in terms of how the debt-based economic system works, how, where your stuff comes from, all these things, right? There's an overall ignorance to these things. And so what you have is a lot of people who expect their lifestyle, they think their lifestyle has been guaranteed because the people who control the system have guaranteed it to you. They've told you over and over again, this is what you deserve. You deserve more and more, and treated you like a customer, treated you like your opinion matters. The customer's always right? This is, and that's no longer going to be the case because it was never sustainable. So this system that you're now 100% dependent on is going to demand more from you and give you back less. And so this is, a hard sell in America. They're having trouble selling this to Americans. It's one of the things that's delaying this, global movement where everybody around the globe is going to have the same level, and it's going to be less for Americans and rich people in every country. There's rich people in every country that live like Americans, like middle-class Americans live, and it's not sustainable. It was never sustainable, and now, they have to sell it to everybody. And it's like a rich man's wife who's gotten entitled and feels, she doesn't know where her husband's money comes from. I mean, it could be the reverse, but this is, the better analogy here. She doesn't know where her husband's money comes from, doesn't care, but she likes to spend it. She has, an addiction to her lifestyle. One of these people would be in one of these, housewives shows or something, these reality TV shows. And she has, she loves her lifestyle. And something happens to her husband's business, and he's making a fraction of what he used to make, and he goes to talk to his wife about cutting back on her spending, and she won't hear it. Like, she's like, you better go fix this, right? I don't care how you do it. You just go do it, right? Like, she doesn't want to be aware of any of that, but she's not changing. She's not giving up her credit cards and whatever she does, her lifestyle and these things. And so that's America right now. Like, Americans just won't hear it. They won't have it. There's just this entitlement. And you think about how nasty and miserable, I've been doing comment videos lately, and entitled and, just all these things these lower level qualities that exist here in America, and for people around the world who have, a little bit more money, a little bit more whatever it is than the average person. Those people aren't happy now. Like, they're not, with all the things that they have, they're not happy. So how's it going to be when there's less? How's it going to be when, they don't have, a fraction of what they have now? This idea of everybody renting things and not owning, that's a hard sell to, certainly people in America. And if you think about what's going to happen, like, let's say the electricity went off. We had no electricity. Just, it was gone forever. Something like that. Or just, in terms of, like, just the gas, the fuel problem we had, that fuel line that got hacked. There was not enough gas for people to drive the way they're driving. We had half the level of gas in our country, or it had to be rationed, or food rationings, or other these things. Just less stuff. Like, Walmart was, a third or 2/3 empty of products, right? Stuff like that. And just, things that are going to come because there's no way it's not. Like, I've seen the numbers. Like, I know what's going to happen. Like, there's no way they can't. They can't keep this promise. They never could keep this promise. And now it's, they're breaking it, the people who control the system. And people can be mad at them and, get mad at God and feel entitled, but it's a lack of awareness of the fragility of the system that could never, it was never sustainable. And there's things that are going to happen, global things, war, man-made things, but also things of nature, catastrophes, calamities, whatever. Upheavals is what they're called, from hurtfulness. We've had a very stable earth for the past, thousands of years. Very, a very abundant earth. And that's not always the case. Things happen, and there's deprivation, and we're entering a period of deprivation on top of everything else. And so, people's ability to accept that, people's ability to realize that they still have a purpose outside the system, because most people don't have a goal. Most people don't have any sort of purpose outside of their materialistic lives. It has to do with money. It has to do with pleasure. It has to do with experiences. It has to do with, material things. And when those things go and they're disappearing, and they're certainly disappearing for the younger generation that, is so mad at the boomers and all, because they just don't have the opportunities, and they know it. Like, they can sense that, and they're, when they get out of their internet-driven video game stupor, right, TikTok video stupor, the system isn't going to be there for them in the way it is now. Like, all the things they're used to aren't, promised, right? Like, they know. And I think most people know, because, like, animals know before things start going south. But people are, in collective denial and saying, we demand that you provide this for us. It's just an attitude of, like, this, stubborn, materialistic wife that doesn't want to give up her, lifestyle and all these things. She's not even allowing you to float the idea out there that is, that her lifestyle could be compromised, that it's something that you could be taken away from her. She's like, if I don't get it from you, I'll get it from somebody else, kind of thing. And so there is going to be a period, something's going to happen. Maybe, there's something that's being talked about, a prediction, a prophecy, and the heartfulness system that's going to happen in 25, 26. There was no, specificity, but it was going to be a big event, bigger than these other events that we've seen. And so there's going to be a time where people realize that it's over, and they're not going to handle it all well. They're going to flip out. I mean, based on everything I see, there's just nothing there in terms of character qualities, in terms of their ability to, deal with disappointment, in terms of any of these things. And so when that happens, there's going to be like a, just a feeling across certainly the country, but the globe. And this feeling isn't going to be, it's not a feeling, it's an emotion, right? A negative, whatever it is. Angst and fear and hatred, all these negative emotions coming up, blame and just, and then the behaviors will set in, like whatever they do, what people do, what the mob does when they, they just go into some sort of frenetic state and they, just lay waste to whatever's around them, just a way to, to express what they're feeling, express it's just this negative, condition that's been set up when the promise is broken and they realize it, right? When they realize that they're not entitled to these things and that the people that have been promising them, have never been able to sustain it. It was a false promise, right? They were just, this day was, as soon as their ancestors left the farm, this day was coming. The day you realize the people who control the system have been lying to you the whole time, this fake promise, and that you need all those skills, like you need, all the things that your ancestors left behind them, the tools and the, skill set to survive outside of, the beastly system. And the feeling of overwhelm, right? How do people deal with being completely overwhelmed? Like now you get a sense of what you're going to have to do to survive and keep your family alive and things like this. I have a sense of this when I started living on the homestead and doing homestead things, but not a real sense, not like, I did it. Like, like my family and I were able to, do all the things you need to survive. But we did enough where I realized, it's not like any one thing is hard, but collectively in the routine and the, all the things you need to become and all the things you need to know and all the, you have to be more sensitive. You have to be like in the flow of nature and reading things and, understanding, like just being intuitive in a way that, most, you can't be oblivious. And most people are just oblivious. They're oblivious to everything around them. And so I have a sense of, what it takes to go from depending on the beast to being more self-sufficient. And certainly it needs community more than anything else. You need other people in, not just a family type situation, but multiple families. And you have to live in a local level where everything's produced locally and everybody has something to offer and skills and people have to take care of each other and be selfless. Like the selflessness is what's, going to be the key to this, where you do for others. And so when I talk about the solution here, I've done a bunch of videos about, comment videos recently. And when I talk about, what's perhaps different from this YouTube channel from other ones is the solution, right? The solution, right? The heartfulness meditation's ability to connect people to God and give you a goal outside your materialistic lives. Because most religions, their goal is, it sounds like a spiritual one because it's like, going to heaven or something, the afterlife or whatever it might be. But it's really about allowing you to indulge on planet Earth and promising, we'll take care of your spiritual life. Like most religions, all religions to one extent or another, are about allowing you to, telling you and selling to you that they're going to take care of your spiritual life, right? So that's what religions do. That you don't have to participate in that. You just vow or pledge to be a member of the organization, and you do what they, tell you in terms of, giving them money or whatever it is, and they'll take care of you. And that just, that's a lie. Like you're not, you have to have a relationship with God, which most people don't want to have, because your material indulgences, people's material indulgences, are things that if you had a relationship with God, like you wouldn't be a billionaire or a trillionaire, because you would know all these other people are starving, while you hoard massive amount of wealth and potential to help those people. And so, having a relationship with God and opening up your heart. There was somebody that said, a recent video, they were doing the heartfulness meditation for 3 years. And I think the person said they had to stop because they could start feeling things from other people. It was overwhelming, right? Their heart was opening up, and, they didn't necessarily feel like it was something that they liked or could cope with. And so that's, the price that people pay for being asleep. Like when you create defense mechanisms to cope with material life, to cope with the harshness and the aggressiveness. People don't realize how aggressive it is in America, like how aggressive you've been trained to be. People are very aggressive, like it's an aggressive place. And, the killer instinct and things are, these are character qualities that are extolled, right? All these things. I've talked about that before, being hard and being, out for yourself. My dogs are fighting in the background. I don't know if you can play fighting. But having a selfish orientation to the world. Me first, what have you done for me lately? Those types of things. And so when you open up your heart and you live in a way where you're, you can feel things, like your shell, your defensive shell comes down. I mean, that's one of the issues with people in the heartfulness system, is that once you open up your heart, you start to feel things. And things don't feel great. Like when you interact with other people, you start feeling their anger and their sadness. I mean, there's just things that people are, make themselves oblivious to. You start feeling all the, the condition, the inner condition of people. And it doesn't feel good, especially when your condition gets better. Like when you start getting cleaned out of your samskaric load, right? When you're, it's a positive thing. And so you start being more sensitive. You become more sensitive to the world around you. You're no longer oblivious to all the, things that are going on inside of people, and then just everything else. You're more aware, and it's painful, like, because our material world, we have beautiful cities and, beautiful things, cars and houses and whatever it is. But the way people feel collectively isn't great. I mean, people aren't feeling good, like they don't, feel good inside. And so and people put on, a fake veneer, and they wear makeup and, with their clothing, and, they put on a brand, a fake persona, a mask, not a corona mask, but an acting mask. They put on, a fake persona. It's funny that, things have changed so much. I used to just say people put on a mask and everyone would know what I was talking about. Now it means something completely different. But people put on this, fakeness, and, once you see behind it, it's very unpleasant. But in all this, you have to change. Like, it's just going to be painful. Opening up your heart and being cleaned out and getting rid of some of the things that you used to cope, and this, negative things you used to cope. It's going to be painful when, you don't have those things anymore. It's painful. The world is full of pain and misery and suffering, even though it's not material. People have their material needs met. Their spiritual deprivation. People are so lonely and lost and without love and without, true relationships, and completely feeling alone and overwhelmed, and, just all these negative things. Lost. I mean, so many people are lost in this world. And everybody's going to feel it. Like when the, veil is lifted, when the system collapses, and people, it's going to be this moment of reality. It's the illusion coming down around them. Their Stockholm syndrome, waking up from their collective Stockholm syndrome to the beastly system and all of it, realizing that they, have to do different. They have to become something other than what they are now, what you've been trained to become. And the thing that you have to become is more significant. You have to become, more of your potential, because the system has, eliminated so much of, just in terms of your ability to, fend for yourself on a materialistic level, the skill set, the agrarian skill set, but also in terms of relationships and ultimately spiritually, in terms of your relationship with God. Like, you have to be so much more than your religion said you had to be, or some people don't even have that. And so now you have to have a spiritual relationship with God. It's going to hit people all at once, and they're not really going to understand it. They're not going to understand what they're feeling. And it's just too much, it's too much of a load to bear all at once. So that's where the heartfulness system, it's a complete blessing.
So luckily I just happened to hear that. I listened to the first 5 minutes. I thought this was a good talk. Of course, I agree with everything else I'm saying here, but 3 years ago I didn't know Dodgy was a piece of shit, but I kind of, I was aware of some of it. Like, it wasn't, Dodgy took over the Sajmark system. He was the successor to Chargy, and he just fucking wrecked it. Kamesh Patel, which I've documented in my Journey series and other places. So substitute the word heartfulness for gratefulness or Sajmark here, because those things still, apply to what I'm saying, but heartfulness certainly doesn't, because it turned into I like to call it a cult, but it's too stupid to be a cult, right? Which is even worse. Like, when you're too stupid to be, like, you're not sophisticated enough to be a cult. And so, heartfulness is bad, but, these other things that I've been able to preserve through the gratefulness meditation and the Sajmark system, and, this transmission and cleaning that's available are still good. So let's get back to the video here.
Because you can start on an internal level, prepare for this. Your relationship with God is going to be the basis for all future existences and all successful endeavors. People are going to have an internalized relationship with God. That hurts you now because, to have a good materialistic life, a relationship with God and having a conscience and empathy would hurt you. Being a sociopath is a good thing right now in our modern day civilization, but that's the limited time offer. In the future, all endeavors will have to be, all successful endeavors will have to be done in partnership with God on an internal level, internally connecting to God through your heart, and that's what the heartfulness system provides. But more than that, having a spiritual goal, a goal to, go back to the Creator and serve God as a part of your, fundamental reason for being here on planet Earth is going to be essential. Because why go through what everyone's going to have to go through? Like, that's going to have to be essential. I think everyone has to come to terms with that. Like, you have to change your orientation to the world. Because if your orientation is just materialistic and having a materially good life or whatever it is, and that's taken away from you, then you have to change why you're here, right? You have to be there for other people, especially the older generation. It could be easy for people who are older. It's hard to change. The older you get, it's hard to change. It's easy for you to just say, it's been nice. I can't reinvent myself that much, but, just being there for the younger generation, having something, if you have something to offer. But if you have nothing to offer, like, what are you going to offer the future generation? And so these are things that people are going to have to come to terms with. And I think most people are starting to feel it, right? Feel that something's coming around the corner and they're not going to like what it is. And so, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.